Hey, thanks for tuning in. We are LivingFit, your trainer's trainer. We not only have education courses for trainers to upgrade their game, but we have full on follow along programs, workouts, exercise breakdowns, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for you to reach your fitness goals. Now, enjoy the show. What's going on, everybody? Aaron Guyett here on the LivingFit Show, and I've got a doozy of a guest for you all. TJ Belger has been in the fitness industry for 30 years. And coming from somebody who's been in the fitness industry for 20 years, I feel like those 20 years have given me tons of stories, a lot to give. So I know for a fact I am going to learn a bunch. And if I'm going to learn a bunch, you guys are going to learn a bunch. So here we go. TJ, how did you get into fitness? How did you get into the fitness industry?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you so much, Aaron, for having me here. Who doesn't like talking about themselves, right? So you've given me a great opportunity. It's made my day. So I played college sports on the East Coast. I moved out to San Francisco for an adventure in my life. I was going to stay for a year. I walked into a gym and they had a help wanted sign on the desk. And I just became a person who showed people around the gym, showed them how to turn the treadmill on and where the bathrooms were. And then that evolved eventually just to becoming a trainer. An early kind of part of my career, which was actually fortuitous / lucky, was that I was the first trainer in San Francisco to have a website back in 1994. So that launched.
That'll elevate you.
Exactly. Especially when my client who said, "You need a website," I said, "I don't know what that is."
Right, exactly.
He was like, "It's on the internet." I was like, "I don't know what that is either." So that set me up. And then from there, I was able to start a small personal training company. My wife and I got married in 2000. We moved just north of San Francisco into the suburbs, where I opened my first gym in 2002, proceeded to open 3 more. And we've had some contraction and expansion over the last 20 years of owning gyms. And that's kind of where we are today. So I've seen lots of ins and outs as far as being a personal trainer, working for a large gym, being on my own as an independent contractor, all the steps in between, as well as, I have had close to 80 employees over my tenure of being in the industry. So I have seen all the ebbs and flows of what people go through. And I'm real thankful that you're having me on to just talk about some of the stuff. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will say I lost 75% of my business in the bubble that popped 2008, which we felt in 2009, 2010. I'm wondering, obviously you went through something similar. I'm sure that was probably a contraction period for you. It was for us. It was cool, though. It helped us really focus in on what we were good at. Do you foresee, and obviously none of us can tell the future, so we're not going to hold it against you, but do you foresee something like that happening right now? Do you feel like that's in the water? Or do you think that this is just like a little tough economic part and then we'll crescendo out of it? What's your thoughts on what's going on right now?
Well, being a naturally glass half full guy, I can't help but look at what's happened in the past, right? And I think that there's so many factors as far as where you're set up, what it is you're doing, the style that you're doing. And I will say that we came out of I went through a dip in 91 when I graduated college, and again in 2002 there was a recession when I opened my first gym, and obviously 2008, and who knows what we're looking down the barrel of right now as far as some sort of black swan event. But I will say that you can be a recession business. You can
100%.
You just have to be open and available. You have to say. You might have to put your agenda in the back seat. You might have to be flexible and malleable and listen to what's coming at you and what people are saying. Mm-hmm. And, having that whiteboard with here's the plan and here's the way the arrows are going to go. And I'm going to follow this thing. And wildly successful carpenters and roofers and even physicians and you name it who have their plan, the ones that fail are the ones that stick with their plan. Yeah. I mean, you do have to see what's going on and know, like, shoot, I said I would never do early morning clients again. Yeah. Well, when you're in the service industry and you hit a rough patch, things change. And to be honest, that's obviously coming out of the pandemic, same thing that I've done and we've had to do. I will share this, that I had thought I had elevated myself to owner in the sense that I had systems and I had people and I had processes, and I was dropping into my gyms and driving by them, and everything seemed to be going well. And a month later, I was carrying Airdynes up 2 flights of stairs to people's bedrooms so that they could stay attached to me because the gyms were shut down and we were scrambling, and my truck was full of gear, all of a sudden, and I had no employees, right?
Yeah. Well, the beauty is they wanted to be attached to you as well, right? You wouldn't be carrying those up the stairs if they didn't want to.
And as you know, back in those days of the shutdown, depending on where you were, it wasn't my idea. It was like the community was like, I'm going on Zoom. And I was like, okay, what's Zoom? Right? So and that's how that worked. But because I came, and everybody who came out of the last 3-4 dips in the economy or dark times of whatever it is, it's probably because they maneuvered, So,
100%. Yeah. We probably struck, they say strike while the iron's hot. We struck while the iron was cooling off. We struck too late, but when we struck, we went hard. Like, it was like, hey, we want to survive. We want to do this thing that is fitness. We want to help people transform. So we've got to transform. I love that. I freaking love that. It's because it's so true. So and I think a lot of people talk about being recession proof, right? No matter what the economy is doing, how do you build resilience in a business? And obviously systems and a plan helps, but then not sticking so much to the plan that you fall off the cliff,
Right.
And it is interesting, the good, more of the, I shouldn't say all of, more of the good ones survive, right? They learn how to adapt and they learn how to overcome. But there is a certain amount, I would love your take on this if you think this is true. There is a certain amount of like heavy sales and marketing where they're not really fitness. They're just sales. That's it. Like, we just want money. And we'll do whatever we can to make that money. I feel like some of them survive as well, which to their demise, or maybe to the help of us, like clarifying what is fitness and how do we help. What's your take on that? Do you see, like, who do you see surviving in, obviously, people that want to continue to do this thing that is fitness and helping people transform, but is there a bad side of that? And if there is, how have you been able to differentiate yourself as a gym and as a personality and fitness, online fitness and whatnot?
Great question. I think I have made it a point to reach out and engage with a lot of people in the industry that are not, you can call me an independent micro gym. You can call me, a strength and conditioning studio. That's our style that I believe in right now, which is, we're a strength and conditioning studio with, heavy things that people pick up and put down. And I would argue that we're, and if you do follow that line of programming, we're kind of the tip of the spear in that way, where it's probably maximum effective and probably maximum uncomfortable, and that's okay, and that's what we are, and we tend to. Well, I believe in that, so that's what we do, and it's understandable that people don't want to teach that kind of or instruct or use that type of methodology. And there's also plenty of people who are like, I don't want to do that, right? They say, they're comfortable with something else, with being not as uncomfortable with their choices. And as when I look at the side of things where people are like, well, and whatever way you want to describe it, it could be franchises, it could be people in your sphere on your social media that are doing all of the marketing, and I'm looking for 12 men who want a total body transformation in 6 weeks, or those types of things.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it, and this goes to, I've been lucky enough to speak to venture capital / hedge fund owned huge fitness facilities, hundreds of thousands of square feet with driving ranges and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it doesn't move my needle or change my heart rate at all in any way, shape, or form thinking about any of those folks, because I do believe that there is an avenue for everybody. I do believe that there are people who want that stuff. I don't. For me personally, I when I go and travel, I try to go to big box gyms. I try to go to because I don't have that experience. And I walk in and it's like I'm literally taking pictures like a tourist, when I go into the what the locker rooms look like. And wow, look at this. Those windows are like 20-foot floor to ceiling, and there's like 200 feet of them. And, there are 50 treadmills here, all that stuff, because it's a fascinating experience for me. It's like going to another country, and they're succeeding unless they're not, and you don't really know if they are or they're not. Man. And I've used this quote before, which is, entrepreneurs don't fail. They quit, and it's understandable if that happens. Yep. And, when you package a big box gym to be sold as an entity inside of your investment package, okay, and when my clients who come to me, say for personal training, and also belong to that facility where they go on their own, complain about the front desk or the towels or it's like, well, nobody cares, right? I mean, and I don't think that entity would really say differently than that either. They're like, hey, we're just, this is what we do, right? And what you're signing up for. Yeah. But for me, I don't think it affects me in the way that it would make me change or worry or anything like that. The only thing that affects folks like you and I, or you and me, are what the community around us is thinking of us. That's the only thing that we can and I think they want us to show up on time. You know what I mean? And they want us to be engaged, and that's what's worked for me. So
100%. Yeah, it was interesting how many large chain gyms folded and then got rebought, right? Repurchased at a probably screaming low deal, and then reinflated to whatever they're going to become next. Something similar but different, right?
Yeah.
So, it is funny. It is awesome that you say like it doesn't get my heart rate up. I don't really, because that's not what I'm trying to do. And obviously you've been effective. I've perused through your social media, and I'm like, man, this guy's got athletes going to all sorts of different Ivy League and higher level colleges, universities. Pretty incredible. And so obviously your model is working to at least that extent. And I'm sure there's many other types of stories, not just hey, we've got, high school athletes, and maybe you even knew them from younger than high school. I don't know the story there, and I'm excited to hear it. And then now they're university, maybe even Olympic and professional level at some stage. And is that you're basically running that same model now, obviously making it individual, staying engaged with the particular person, because there are a lot of particulars when the athlete gets that high to that high of a level. But is that pretty much, hey, that's a kind of a snapshot of how things roll for most of your gyms and most of your programming?
No.
I love it.
And it's one of those things where, when you're running it like a marathon, when you're running your business, your life like a marathon, and but at the same time, you don't know the course. You're just kind of going, and you're like, man, I hope that chalk arrow is coming up soon, because I'm not sure if I'm going the right way.
Right.
things happen, right? And yes, some things I took advantage of, and we got into CrossFit super early in 2005, and I was able to learn from the guy, Greg Glassman, who created it. And so that gave me an exposure. But at the same time, and I've said this before, my clientele couldn't do CrossFit-y things. Yeah. They couldn't do kipping pull-ups or handstands or climb ropes. We live in the suburbs where it's folks 40 to 80 and they're kids. Yeah. And so we had to adapt this methodology of, we got to get off these machines and start showing people how to squat and deadlift and do push-ups and things like that, and carry their own body weight. And so with that concept, it kind of took off, right? And we were definitely in the right place at the right time. We did some things to accentuate that. Sure, we expanded our footprint. We got out of the gates faster than everybody else. There was no Soul Cycle. There was no Orange Theory. There was no anything that ended up coming on the scene. F45 that's come up lately. And so that was great. But an interesting thing that happened as of late was that when the pandemic hit California and shut us down hard, right? And some places got shut down for a certain period of time, but for sure, California and our section of Northern California was locked down hard and for a long time. Mm-hmm. And that created a threshold for a lot of people, and a threshold that a lot of people couldn't get over, and they still haven't gotten over. And that's okay. But the interesting thing that happened was when we were able to open up even outside with masks, in our parking lot with masks, the first people that came were people's kids. Yeah. People trusted us to work with their kids before they came back. And I think it's because that was where their greatest concern was. These were kids who for 3 months were sitting on a computer all day at school, no physical activity, not leaving the house, all that stuff. And when they handed those kids over to us 2 years ago now, that really kind of churned a word of mouth, that people trusted us, but something then accelerated. And, for example, one of our coaches, Dana, her son was a high-level swimmer, and people just handed them her kids. Their kids. And so now she's become this coach of these kids who are launching into Olympic development, Olympic qualifying, water polo, like you said, high-end universities, Ivy Leagues, all that stuff. Yeah. But if you poured through my social media 5 years ago, you wouldn't see that.
No, right.
Right. And so it's just something that's happened that has now created this flywheel over here.
Yeah.
Am I saying to myself, okay, we're going to be the training platform no, because the cycle could turn, and all of a sudden, at the same time, what we call our Legends program, which is our 60-plus-year-old program, has exploded, right? Yeah. Just because we had it. We didn't market it. We put it in our newsletter. We talked about it, but that's also taken off, because I think folks are like, I need to be strong, right? Yeah. And these are decisions. These are things that you and I are like, no, these are principles that everybody, but that's just not true of what you and I know to be true, right? Yeah. And we have to be there. I hate to use this marketing term of funnels, but we do have to create these funnels and nets to catch these folks as they're looking for things. And we've done no marketing, that's just not our thing, but we've just been around for a long time. Okay, maybe we have our name in a bunch of school, we support student parent organizations and things like that, but that's way more for the good of that organization than it is to try to get our name out there. Right. So so that's just my thoughts on that.
Yeah. So is it now a single TJ's gym, or is it, do you have a few, or what's the status on the brick and mortars?
So we have 2 locations. Mm-hmm. I will say it's interesting that our lease was ending on our 3rd location, which was actually our first location. Our lease was ending the month after the shutdown. and our landlord was giving us no wiggle room, which is not, he didn't have to at all, but we decided that, okay, we're gonna go, we're gonna leave, and we're now doing as much revenue with 2 gyms as we did with 3.
Yeah,
and
I love
so
that.
without the overhead, without the that, and there was no model, there was no plan.
Yeah.
It was just, I built my staff up to 6, 7 people. We still need more people. I think when we closed, we had 14 or 15, and we're definitely still recovering, but all the signs are pointing in the right direction. For sure. Once again, if anybody's listening to this, soon, like I said, I think that economically we're looking at something going on.
Yeah.
And we are doing the same thing of looking at things, saying, okay, how nimble can we be? How malleable can we be? No different than any other time, so.
Yeah. It's so funny that, people get to where they're like minding their P's and Q's and like looking at their budgets and really number crunching and all this stuff during times where maybe there's a little bit less to go around, so to speak, economically. Right. But man, I'm like, it would behoove you to do that when you're crushing it, because then you don't have to worry as much when it's, but also that's easier said than done. I mean, if your glass is half full guy, which you said you are, and I am too, a lot of times we're like, you start vision casting. It's like, then I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And so then that takes capital. So I also understand that.
And I have made huge mistakes, financial, or anything from staffing to any decisions that I've made, which I think is part of the deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It's funny, the new CEO of Amazon is trying to undo so much of what Bezos did.
Yeah.
And while they have no issues with money or any of that stuff, it's like, okay, right? Like everybody, because they hired a numbers guy. They didn't hire a visionary to take his place, right?
Right.
And we all have to look at those things and be like, well, okay, that was a huge, colossal mistake. And tomorrow I'm going to wake up and go to work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the way it has to be. So
absolutely.
When you shoulder yourself with that owner tag, which anybody who is accepting a check or a Venmo from somebody, there's no third party. You're the owner.
Yeah.
And,
buck stops with you.
Yeah. That owner's mindset is you're right. You do have to. Got to go through your stuff. You gotta look at that stuff that's not great. And like I said, my systems of 2019, a lot of them are gone.
Yeah,
because I don't need them because unfortunate circumstances, but I just don't. And wow, I'm wildly. It's okay, Yeah. This office that I'm in right now, I took over a space next door to one of my gyms, a small 1,000 square foot dry cleaner that went out. And I took it over and I built an office for myself, really kind of my first office. I never really had one. It was like kind of out of my car and some stuff at home. And it's funny because it was so great when I built it. I was like, I have a vision for, I want this to be clean and white and all this stuff. And behind my camera right now, I have probably 2,000 pounds of stacked extra bumper plates that I don't need anymore.
Dude, I'm going to drive there tomorrow.
Exactly. And it's like, these are of value to somebody. And
sure.
When I get a chance to some of the crappier ones to donate and some of the better ones to sell, but that wasn't on my list of being an owner, whatever that means. But this is what's happening right now. So, So it changed. I think it's going to be different next year. I don't have any idea what it's going to be though. Just different. And I'll roll.
Exactly. 100%. And I love, you started out by saying hey, you got to be flexible and you got to be aware, looking and engaged and seeing and listening to what is happening so that you can actually be flexible and adapt. And so do you do any sort of online, any sort of technology driven whether it's training, programming, coaching, guiding, mentoring, consulting, anything like that?
I do mentoring for, on the industry professional side,
Mm-hmm.
completely for support. I don't do it for pay. I do it. Anybody who wants to talk to me, I am happy to talk to them and tell my experience.
Probably 20% of our followers are trainers and coaches. So if you haven't already, right, tjsgym.com, all the info's on there. Write it down. Go see it. Stop this right now. Hit him up. He said it. I didn't.
Exactly. And I have no intention of doing that. That's not where my drive. But man, I do love talking to professionals.
Yeah.
So on that side of things, on the other side of the actual gym side of revenue, yes, there is a number of my coaches who do lots of still do Zoom. We do have a healthy programming business. We had a programming business, but then obviously the pandemic sent so many people worldwide, and that part of our business grew by 100%.
Wow.
And so people still want us to coach them. So that's been great. And even though they're virtual, and whether it's a, Zoom session or it's just programming, or, that's worked out really well for us. And once again, just listening to what people are asking for, So if I threw up that roadblock, like we still run Zoom classes by turning on the camera of our live gym.
Oh, so smart.
Because people want it. And it's, what is the cost?
Yeah,
right? Our coach logs in and opens it up and he's like, hey guys. And then in the Zoom screen, here's the workout. You see it on this side. I do a 1-minute YouTube video for every workout for our classes every day. So they see that YouTube video, they see the movements, they can ask the coach any questions while the coach is addressing the class behind them. And then every once in a while, the coach checks in. And is it coaching? No. Is it connection? 100%.
Yeah. Yep.
100% people feel like they're still part of the community in some way, shape, or form. And that's all they're asking for.
Yeah. It gives that opportunity for the person that can't, won't, is afraid to, right, come to whatever the reasoning is. And we don't have to judge on that. It's like, hey, but you can still do the workouts and you can still connect. Yeah. Right. You and I both know that in-person kinesthetic, visual, verbal feedback is so much better. However, if you don't have a choice or you can't do the in-person, is like, well, this is the next best thing. Right. It's interesting. We have a level 4 where we've got a bunch of entrepreneurial types and fitness directors and things like that and owners, gym owners and whatnot in this. And that was what I like. I don't do that anymore because I sold my gym in 2017, but I'm like, but guys, if you're gonna do something, like do like exactly what you said. I'm like, because if you're doing in-persons anyways, yeah, if you already have a laptop or a phone or whatever the case, it's like, come on, man. Like that's easy. It's just set it up and go to town. Yeah. Even if it's just a live version, it's like, hey, you're just going to see this, and the fact that you have coaches that, and probably a system where they go and check in, look at the chat. Okay, here you go. Yeah. Here's a couple of feedback. Right. So how do you typically run like a small group? Is it a larger class? One-on-ones, or is it a hodgepodge of all of it? All
of it. So we have an open gym model, group class model. We have the majority is personal training of our revenue, small group personal training, you name it, pretty much all day. There's somebody using the facility somehow. Obviously, you have your peak times, but we try to make it so that, with once again, the pandemic, so many people not going into the office, we had to make a decision. Our gyms used to not be just open. And we made a decision to say, okay, this is uncomfortable for us in a bunch of different ways, but the gym is open from this point in the morning until this time at night. And this is what we're doing. And it's completely worked out for us. We opened another room that's a app access room, 24-hour. So that's a separate part of the reason I took over that dry cleaner, was to have people have access 365 days, 24/7. and that's just something else to offer. But none of it was like, and this is going to be our meat and potatoes. Like when you look at our pie of where our revenue comes from, there's so many different colors and slices in that pie. Yeah. And the reason is because that gives my employees the potential of earning revenue in many different areas.
Yeah.
And keeping them interested and having their ability to modulate their day or week. Mm-hmm. And not have to be boots on the ground if they don't want to be boots on the ground, not have to just be doing one-on-ones or classes. They can all kinds of different opportunities that they have available to them. So, I mean, I think that's important. My job is to create careers. If I want to have employees, I can't make jobs. They have to be career-based. So, and we've been successful in doing that. So
obviously, if you're mentoring people in the industry, clearly you're obviously mentoring people that are under you. And then if you have a career focus, like you're helping create a career for your employees, obviously you care about your staff. And so they're probably getting educated often. So something that most people don't know if they're not from California and running a gym in California, even if you're a trainer in California, California has that ABC. California and New York, I think, has the ABC employment law where essentially if you're a small gym, mid-sized gym, you can't really run the independent contractor model. You get smashed on through taxes. And that's like barbershops and hairstylists. And there's a myriad of, the only ones that got away from that was the Lyft and Ubers, right, of the world. Right. They were able to create separate legislation for that. I think there's a financial carve out as well, but that doesn't matter. That was probably the coolest thing that happened to me when I was in Southern California and had my gym. It actually forced me to creatively come up with a better hiring model, a better education model. And because I couldn't pay, so I was like, what other value can I couldn't pay way more. So I was like, what other value can I give to really help these trainers out? And it's actually now, like, the investment has returned tenfold. Watching those people succeed in the different areas and aspects. Some of them stayed in fitness and some went on, but because of that, talk to me a little bit about your model, a little bit about how, and I know we're going to go way over, and I'm okay with this if you're okay with this.
No problem.
But talk to me a little bit about your model. How does, obviously you said careers, that made me think, and I was already thinking, like, probably people don't know that you had to have employees even if you didn't want to have employees, because a lot of people run that independent contracted model outside of California. So yeah, talk to us a little bit about that.
So the first thing that you base your process around is, what is the cost of living? And there's calculators everywhere online. I mean, literally, what does it cost to live here? And I think most people will be shocked at how high it is to live wherever they are. They're like, oh, wow, okay, that's more than I thought it was.
Yeah.
And so I use that as a basis. And we are at six figures, right? If you want to live around where we are. So that is just to give an idea. So you're thinking to yourself, like, well, they should be comfortable making this much, or they should be, well, what's the cost of living? Okay, here it is. How do I go on a whiteboard and create, a situation where, what do they have to do? Keeping them under 40 hours, right? Because once you get into overtime or time and a half or double time, that screws up the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to work over 40 hours. I don't want my staff to work over 40 hours. That's a grouchy ass trainer, right? Yeah. So now we have to start figuring out what's the split gonna be, right? Between what we make, what is fair for us to be bringing in the business, so that person shows no other place on the planet that you're an employee of. You just show up and do your job. Mm-hmm. And if you're not showing up and doing your job and you're having to do all this extra stuff, I mean, it's terrible. If you're a teacher and you have to buy supplies, right? And bring them into your classroom, or, you're a guy who has to go to a job site and bring your own tools. Like you can do that, but you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to show up and do your job, bring your own computer to work. Well, you're a software engineer. That's supposed to be waiting for you, And so that's
not a crappy one either. Come on.
Right. Exactly. One that actually works. So when you look at it that way and you say, okay, so this is the model we're going to make, and this is a make-believe model that works. Okay. And now the next thing you have to do is you have to introduce your staff member to it. You have to say to them, like, so this is what it could look like. And here's options 1, 2, 3, and 4, heavier on personal training or classes or programming or special events or anything that they can come up, and letting them also give feedback while looking at it. Like, well, would this work? Couldn't I just do this? It's like, ooh, I'd love to do that. Like the state of California doesn't allow me to do that. And this is the way it has to be. And you need a rate, and I can't have you making 5 different variable rates, and all that different stuff that goes into it. And, what that they get in return, literally from that one meeting, is stability. Yeah. They get in return, they're like, oh, this, right? And during that, I'm saying, besides my family, you are the most important thing here. Mm-hmm. When you sign your employee agreement with me, you all of a sudden become my responsibility to provide you with whatever you want that's in these models. Yeah. Right. It's not my responsibility to go outside of that, but I can't do less than this. That's for sure. Yeah. So as far as marketing you and talking you up and training you and giving you the tools and things you need in order to literally make this livable wage, that's my responsibility. And I will do everything I can. And then I get to point to my current staff and be like, so this is how it's working. Right? Rather than, well, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Like, I have existing, you should be able to buy a house and drive a new car and have health insurance that you choose. And all of those things that, are completely possible. And my wife makes a joke. She's a psychologist. And she's like, you make as much money, if not more, per hour than people with letters after their names, right? And that's okay. It's okay to do that and to say that, and proud to be that. And it doesn't have to be after 30 years. It can be, you just have to be of value. And I think what I give in return is mentoring folks to be like, I think this is where you need a little work. I think this is where you need to grow. I think this is a book you need to read. I think you need to engage over here, and it's not all technical. It's not all training. It's not all, it is self-growth. The quote that was given to me recently was, the best healers are the ones that continually heal themselves. And that's kind of what we do, right? That's what we're doing for people. So the work just can't ever end on yourself. That will continue to, show its rewards. And it's every job out there can be a grind. Every job out there, I have a very good friend who works at Google, and she's being forced to go into the office 3 days a week, and she hasn't gone in 2 years. And she's like, why? I go in, I manage 600 people on my team. I go in and log on to Zoom. Right? Or, Google Meet, right? She's like, why do I have to be here to do this? It took me an hour to get here. It's going to take me an hour 30 to get home. Yeah. And this job is a grind, and she is compensated massively and all that good stuff. But when you look at whatever situation that could be better than the one you're in, you just have to look and say, well, maybe I need to tweak some things in this existing model. It'll be okay. Especially if I'm working on tweaking me continually. So that's kind of going into the specifics as well as the kind of 30,000 foot view of what we try to do with folks.
So I've got 3 questions, and then we'll get to the final, what is living fit to you question. But I've got 3 questions, and if you have the time, I would love to knock these 3 questions out.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. And so the first question is, if somebody's watching this and they're like, we just had somebody sign up from Sweden, and then another person sign up from Iran, and another person sign up from India. So there's people worldwide, like you were saying, people go worldwide now from the pandemic. Or if you're an online business already, then it's available online or worldwide. So if they're coming to you worldwide, I know you have a lot of slices in that pie, right? So what are some of the models or funnels, like you were saying, that people could jump into and learn from you from just a fitness standpoint? If they're trying to get in shape and they're a legend, like you said, or they're a student and they're trying to, better themselves as athletes, or, what are some of the different ones that you provide at tjsgym.com?
Well, at the gym, the first thing that happens with 100% of the people who are interested in us is a phone call with me. I've always done it. I always will. That isn't something that I would ever give up, where I have a 15 to 30 minute, or maybe even more sometimes, just talking, and then I boldly give them my synopsis.
Yeah.
I tell them what I think they need, right? And I tell them, like, if you don't choose what I'm telling you, this is what I predict will happen. You might get the initial burst of the group fitness class, but eventually you're gonna, maybe kind of burn out, and you won't really have an attachment with a coach. And I would really like you to start with that, if possible, somebody to hold you accountable and make you feel like you're being inspired and educated by somebody. And I will allow them to give feedback. I will allow them to talk themselves through, because let's just say we have somebody who's like, I have 10 years of experience. Yeah, I've been on the shelf for 2 years. I could jump right in there. And I'm like, you absolutely could, and I will absolutely let you. But why? What happened the last 2 years? Well, my gym closed, and then we moved, and I just really couldn't get it going again. I said, so no accountability. So how are we going to change that? Right? And how can I help you change that to make sure that doesn't happen again? Right? Because who knows what's going to happen? If your wife could get sick, or your job moves you again, or just whatever, something happens. Right? So let's talk about this. And that usually leads to them saying, okay, well, maybe I do want to talk a little bit more about what you have to offer in other ways, as far as like, how does that programming work? I want to come to your gym 2 days a week. Okay, so what do you do on the other 5? Well, what do you think I should be doing? Right? Well, I think you should be doing this, but also, what do you like to do? And then we get into a big, long discussion where eventually it's going to come down to some sort of, what's programming? Programming is accountability. What's one-on-one? One-on-one's accountability. It's all under the fitness realm, but you would like to try to hold people to something where they're, and you would like the group class model to be holding people accountable, but it doesn't compare to other ways. So we try to attach them to those other ways.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And what better way to help direct people to the solutions that you have? Or maybe you find out, like, we're not the solution for you, which is probably not the case most of the time, would be my guess, considering how we've chatted. But I'm sure there's a few people maybe on the planet where it's like, okay, maybe not.
Well, I'll tell you some funny stories that, like, some of the intros over the last 2 years of people being locked up, I've had people call drunk. Right? Yeah. And when I follow up with them the next day, as I slowly, say, I think we should jump on tomorrow. They're like, what did we talk about yesterday? This is the middle of the day. Yeah. Right? People have gone through some weird shit the last couple of years. So of course if you're going to get that aspect, you're going to get all kinds of people who are looking all kinds of things. Yeah. And I think when I get into the accountability part, that does scare some people away.
Oh, for sure.
They want to go someplace and be a little bit nameless and a little bit faceless and just kind of show up and do their thing. And I say to them, you can do that, but I am going to tap you on the shoulder at some point.
Yeah.
Say, hey, how you doing? You want to come to my office and talk about, your goals? Or I might text you out of the blue, and I think to some people, they're like, yeah, no, I'm not, that's not for me. Okay. But that's what we do here. Right. So
yeah, it's interesting. The nameless, faceless people tend to be a little shorter lived in their fitness journey. Unfortunate, because I think, we're social creatures naturally, right?
Yeah.
And so
They're
when
going
we
through
have
it.
that connection, it really does help with accountability. It really does help keep us going, and keep us inspired and keep us motivated. All those things that can be waning. They can easily drift away really quickly. So,
Sure.
the next two questions, and I'll just ask them together. And then if you have maybe top three because you can't choose one or whatever, that's fine too. But greatest success, greatest failure, what you learned from both.
Let's see. I'm gonna probably be a little generic here, but my kids are probably my greatest success. I'm hitting empty nest, right? So my youngest is my two kid. I have two daughters. My youngest just graduated from high school, and they're heading to college, and they're heading to college together. One is 2 years older than the other one, but they're going to be at the same school, which is fantastic.
That's
And
cool.
we, as a family, went to a concert 2 nights ago. The Bleachers is my daughter's favorite band, and at 53 and 50, whatever my wife's age is, and 17,
so much younger than whatever I just said.
Exactly. She looks 20. But we went to a concert together. That was my kids and my wife's Father's Day gift to me, for us to go to a concert together, and they couldn't wait. And we had a great time.
Nice.
That's a massive accomplishment, I think, that my kids want it. And I hope to keep that going.
Yeah, that's huge. Man, I hope that for myself as well.
Yeah. And then probably my greatest failure, I think we all in this industry can be very hard on ourselves. Oh, yeah. And when I say what I'm going to say, I think people's reactions would be like, well, come on, man, like you can't be that hard on yourself. But, when things happen and people who are very important to you for periods of time in your community and your business, and they fade away and you keep going because the pandemic, like we closed a gym. And that community was gone, and some of them we kept up with and some of them we haven't. But then when I look back on the last 30 years of, man, like before these things were invented, I still have my book of people's phone numbers, right? I still have my, and I don't know if I've done a good enough job of keeping up with people. And I wish that I had, and every once in a while on Facebook or someplace you catch somebody and you reach out, but you don't make the connection. And if I at one point was their trusted person in the way of, as more than just fitness, right? That relationship 100%. Becomes more.
Especially with one-on-one, you're straight up there.
Yes. And it is, I feel like it's a responsibility where I wish I kept up a little bit more with folks. So that's probably, way more than any kind of business failure or a loss of money or, something like that. I would say that that's something that I think about, and so that's the way I look at that.
Yeah. And don't be so hard on yourself. But at the same time, I totally understand and empathize because same, you think
as you do. Yeah.
You start counting like, man, or you do see somebody on Facebook like, oh,
yes.
I wonder how they're doing.
Yes. Yeah.
And then your heart like breaks because you're like, man, I've been an a-hole for.
Yeah. And I look at it as a one-way street. I don't think that you should say, well, they could reach out to you. And it's like, well, it doesn't work that way. I took this, I wear this hat.
Yeah.
I show up for people to do this. And it's not just for money. And we had a connection and something happened.
Yeah.
And I should have kept that connection going.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's holding yourself accountable, I guess, to your own standards, right? It's like, and how can you preach accountability like you have been if you're not holding yourself accountable, even in your mistakes or failures or losses or, whatever, right? So I think that's beautiful. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, TJ. So the last question, and we went way over, but I appreciate you hanging out and sharing your wisdom. with all of us, and we'll definitely have to have you on again, TJ. What is Living Fit to you? And obviously not Living Fit, our brand, but just this concept or principle or idea that is Living Fit.
Yeah, you had asked that, and that was obviously kicking around in my mind. I've listened to many of the podcasts, so I hear this, and without being too verbose, I think that when you have clarity, everything is clear. That is such a stupid quote, but the quest for working towards that is something that should be constant, and that and it can be so muddy and foggy out there at times. It can be so hard to have that, to be searching for clarity, but Living Fit to me is that journey, that constant journey. Because during that journey of fogginess, and you're picking heavy stuff down, and you're picking it up and you're putting it down, and while you're like lost and you're running those stairs, and while you're struggling with what to do, but you're still like, I'm not gonna eat crap or drink too much, or that's part of the journey. And Living Fit is constantly seeking that clarity. And I don't subscribe to any one thing. I don't preach or say, read this book or follow this way or this style. But without the constant work, I'm around sometimes very wealthy people. Sometimes, as well as much older people in life, they lose purpose. And that's a rough place to be. They've lost that concept of living fit, if you will. Yeah. Even though they're working out, they're like hanging around the gym looking for people to talk to, or they're kind of looking for something. And if you're super successful, you don't have to be like that. You can still be constantly working, constantly trying to find your own clarity in life. So that's, I said it wouldn't be verbose, and that was 10,000 words right there for you. But
oh no, that's great though, because there is something clarifying, right, about that journey. And then even when it's foggy, it's like, no, I'm still going to be in this.
Yeah.
And then you hit those points where you're like, wow, I can see it all. And then you get back down in the valley or whatever, it's struggle bus again or whatever. But I think that's huge. That speaks a lot to my heart and my own personal journey. So I appreciate that, TJ. And I've got to do a shout out, Jason Skisick, for connecting us. Really appreciate him and his connections. I've had now 2 of the 3 interviews from him, and this is the second one. And I couldn't ask for anything more. So thank you so much, TJ, for hopping on.
Absolutely.
Check out TJ's gym at tjsgym.com. And
if you wouldn't mind me jumping in there real quick, I am launching at the end of the summer something called thecon.co, CONN.co. It's going to be a newsletter media company for what I call the pirates of the fitness industry. Just information, and I'm not selling anything. There's no courses or anything like that. It's just going to be a newsletter and possibly a podcast aimed towards just helping folks like you and me who hang a shingle and do this every day and share stories just like you're doing, but in a newsletter format. So that's what I have coming up. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm so glad you plugged that, TJ. And just out of curiosity, do you love writing, and do you write every day?
I do. I do. It's one of the things that I didn't know. I've written. We have our own gym newsletter, my blog that I write every week, my content creation. That when we moved it, I opened the gym. I just thought that that's what you had to do. So I definitely did it begrudgingly. It was like, it's got to get out. And, 20 years later, you're like, wow, I kind of like this. Like,
Yeah.
this is, I have, like you said, all these stories to share, not only from 30 years, but just from an hour ago, right? Because I talk to people, right?
Yeah.
I am around people and their stories all the time. And it would just be fun to share some of that stuff.
So the con.co.
Yep.
And is it up live right now? Can we check it out right now?
Yeah, the website's live right now, and it's in its initial launch stages, and hopefully the first newsletter will be heading out in a few short weeks. So,
well, TJ, thank you so much for hopping on the Living Fit Show. Hey, for more interviews like that, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, if you're looking for not only those interviews, but follow along programs, exercise breakdowns, workouts, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for your fitness results, make sure you hop on to living.fit, become a member today, and I'll see you on the next one.